What's up, everybody? UFC 268 is here. We're here with the card best bets, DFS picks, lineup advice, FanDuel, DraftKings, predictions, you name it, we're here. Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Namajunas, Zhang Weili. We got it all here for you, and I'm excited to break it down with Jake the Snake, owner of MMA DFS.com. Jake, what's up, man?
Not a whole lot, man. What's going on?
Same old stuff. Busy week for you, I know, per usual. 5 new fighters on the card. 2 5-rounders, UFC pay-per-view event. So busy week, I know. But how are you feeling about the card so far?
Yeah, man, it's been a crazy week trying to get all these new people, figure out all these main events. But I really like it, man. I think it's a great card. We got enough options up top that I think it'll keep ownership kind of spread out, which is great. So yeah, I really like it.
Absolutely. So what we do in these videos is about 10 to 15 minutes long. We start by breaking down the main events, what they mean for DFS and betting purposes. We talk about the UFC newcomers and what to expect from them. We give our DFS fights to target, 1 or 2 fights that we like both sides of. We'll give our favorite tournament play for FanDuel and DraftKings, and then we'll close out with our stream parlay of the week. If you like what you see, click the subscribe button, get notified when we go live or upload any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you like the content. Any questions, you can always comment on the video below. Generally tougher for UFC videos because of the quick turnaround. So you can always hop in our Discord server to talk to Jake and other OccupyFantasy.com members of the community. So Jake, let's jump right into it. 2 5-rounders. We'll start with the main event that everyone's excited for. Usman Covington. How do you see it playing out for betting DFS purposes?
Yeah, man, what a great fight. We've already had it once, and we've seen how it played out that time. It was a pure striking battle. No takedowns attempted the first time they went at it, which both these guys have wrestling backgrounds. So, sometimes you just see that cancel each other out. And I think they both kind of want to kill each other anyway. So I'm expecting another high volume stand up brawl. Usman's never been taken down in the UFC. I don't think that's going to change. It's possible he would try to take Covington down, but I don't really think he will. I think he just wants to, break his jaw a couple more times, make sure that's not ambiguous. So I think that's going to be a high volume stand-up brawl. I think Usman knocks him out. I think it probably comes earlier. I could see it coming in round 3 this time, but I think it's going to be high volume, just pure striking battle. And then I'm on Usman's side here. I think that it's the Covington value truthers are laughable in my opinion. But
they're out there in abundance too.
They are, man. They're all over Twitter. Keep betting that value against the guy that never loses.
Yeah, tough thing to swallow there. So Usman Covington DFS, right? Low risk contest. We're gonna stack this fight like we normally do, I assume. And then sounds to me like you're gonna be around the field, maybe higher on Usman, and it sounds like you're gonna be lower on Covington. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. Like you still stack it in low risk, and on DraftKings, just because if it does turn into another 5-round brawl, then you're going to get some value there. And Covington, he's only 6,900 on DraftKings, so you still stack it. It lets you do a lot. I would also stack the other 5-round fight in low risk, and then you just have 2 spots to fill out. You're locking in 2 high scores. You might get 2 decent losers there. And then you have a ton of salary left over to fill out your low risk lineups. And for high risk, I don't think you have to have 2 5-round fighters. I think there's a lot of ways that only one 5-round fighter ends up in the winning lineup, but you definitely can have 2 5-round fighters. It's not to say you can't, but you don't have to.
Yeah, and I think it's not a requirement like we see on some slates. Low risk contests, we talk about it. Pros do this all the time. MMA specialists do it all the time. When we have 2 5-rounders, especially when the pricing discrepancy is so large and what it allows you to do with the rest of your lineup, you really want to stack both fights in 50-50s, double ups, and head-to-heads on DraftKings exclusively. Now, you mentioned not necessarily needing both of them in your high-risk contest, and as we'll get to, there are a lot of higher price favorites that have massive ceilings that could easily outscore a 5-round fight. So that's something to keep in mind. And again, it's not a requirement. So you mentioned the other fight, Namajunas and Zhang Weili. Thoughts on that fight, how it plays out, and how it could fail or succeed for DFS?
Yeah, so Namajunas is like the queen of running fights back. This is going to be her 4th rematch of her career. The first 3, I believe she won all of them in decisions. 2 of those came in her last 5 fights. And kind of see this playing out the same way. I think that we're going to see Namajunas win a decision here. I think she's got too good movement for Weili. Weili's like a power striker, but We saw her be a little flat-footed in that first matchup. I think Namajunas is just really good at getting out of the way of these power punches. Coming back from Weili, I think she's going to piece her up for 5 rounds. I think we're going to see a decision here. I mean, it's kind of the prediction I had going into the first one, and then Namajunas lands a head kick in 78 seconds and knocks her out. But I think that was more of the exception than the rule, and I think that we're going to see this one last significantly longer. If Weili were to win, all of her finishes have come in the first 2 rounds. So, we'd be looking at like a round 1, round 2 finish for her. But man, Rose is so good on her feet, just the footwork, the movement. I think she's going to be able to get out of the way of the punches. She's too quick for Weili. So I think she's going to be able to take it into the later rounds and just kind of cruise to a decision. And the question will be whether or not it scores enough. We saw Namajunas only score 79 points in a 5-round decision against Joanna. And I mean, that kind of shows her floor, I mean, it doesn't mean that that's like her ceiling, but she has shown a way she can go to a 5-round decision and not return value even at her cheaper price tag.
Absolutely. And pro move there, only saying the first name of her opponent and not attempting the last name. You've been doing this a little bit, Jake, so I appreciate that. So, yeah, a couple ways that fight fails, and you're against the line move there, right? Because we've seen some line move on Weili, and we expect her to be the more popular of the 2 fighters in DFS.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I kind of love the line move because I think it's sort of a trap. I think that everyone is value betting the line. I mean, you look at it last time when Weili was showing a negative 170 favorite. Maybe you even got as high as negative 200. Now you can get her at even money. So, I mean, I get that from a value betting perspective that, if you were willing to bet Weili as the favorite, then why wouldn't you bet her as a coin flip? And a ton of people were. So I think they're doubling down on her. But I don't know. I just don't think it's a great matchup for Weili. I think that, people like Andrade, that's a great matchup for Weili. People are going to stand in front of her and trade. And Namajunas' footwork is just too good for her. So I like the value bet on Namajunas at even money. I like the decision bet at plus 380. I'm not really on Weili, but I mean, she's always got a puncher's chance. I mean, she's got a ton of power.
Absolutely. So if you want the full fight breakdown on those main events, make sure you check out MMADFS.com. Jake does a great job of doing all that. Check it out after you watch this video. So, Jake, let's jump into the newcomers. 5 fighters making their UFC debut. Always makes it tough on us to chart the fights and write up these fighters. So this is what I'll do. I'll throw the name to you. You give me brief background, what their fighting style is like, and then what we can expect from them in this matchup. How's that sound?
Sounds good, man.
All right, I'm bringing up the Occupy model here at OccupyFantasy.com on screen. Ranks every fighter FanDuel DraftKings with projected ownership. So I'm sorting by money line here. We'll start with the biggest favorite all the way down until the biggest underdog. Obviously, top of the board is Ian Gary making his debut against Jordan Williams. He's minus 400, Jake.
Yeah, so he's a 23-year-old Irish Cage Warriors champion. He's 7-0 with 5 finishes. He's coming off a 25-minute decision. That was probably his least exciting fight that I saw. But overall, he's a well-rounded fighter. He's got good grappling, good striking. He's not really a power puncher, but he has good kicks. He knocked out a former UFC fighter with a head kick 2 fights ago. Really quick with his jab. He's a really good all-around fighter. I think he could be a little bit sneaky for a submission here. He only has 1 submission, 4 knockouts, but a lot of his knockouts come from head kicks, flying knees, not as much with the punches. And, we just saw Jordan Williams get submitted in the first round of his last fight. He looked pretty vulnerable there. So I think Gary, he's got a few different ways he can win this. And Jordan Williams looked absolutely terrible in his last fight. But, overall, just a well-rounded guy, up-and-coming young prospect. I think he's going to make a little bit of noise in the division.
Yeah, 9,500, most expensive fighter on DraftKings in his debut. All right, next fighter making their debut, another highly regarded prospect, this time a kickboxer, Alex Pereira, who, Jake, you and I have both talked about a little bit throughout the week. But give me your thoughts on him coming into his UFC debut and what we can expect from him.
Bit older. He's coming at 34 years old. Like you said, he's got a long kickboxing career. I want to say 40 kickboxing fights. He was 33-7. His claim to fame is he knocked out Adesanya in a kickboxing match in 2017. He also has a win over Dustin Jacoby, I want to say back in 2014. And he had a decision win over Adesanya in a 3-minute, 3-round kickboxing match, a 9-minute fight. Apparently it was a close decision, a little bit controversial, but really good kickboxer, not as good at MMA. No grappling, questionable cardio. He's only got 4 MMA fights to his name. He gets submitted in the first one by a guy that didn't look that great, that just completely dominated him on the ground. He got taken down again in his second MMA fight. Got kind of lucky, and the ref stood him back up. So, I mean, really, really questionable takedown defense and grappling. And that's my biggest concern with him. But I also have some cardio questions. So, you're in kickboxing fights, they're 3-minute rounds. You come over to MMA, they're 5-minute rounds. I think that makes a pretty big difference. Working in his favor, that his opponent also has pretty big cardio issues with Andreas Michailidis. So it'll be an interesting fight between two guys with very questionable gas tanks. But Pereira, really, really worried about how he's going to handle any grappling in that fight. So that's his Achilles heel.
Yeah, for sure. And if you watch his fights, he spent a lot of his time being pushed up against the cage too, which obviously lowers his ceiling for a quick finish, for racking up significant strikes. Obviously, if this plays out just in the center of the ring and they start kickboxing, then Pereira's probably going to knock him out. Ideally, Michailidis gets there, pushes him up against the cage, dirties up the fight, ideally takes him down, assuming you're hoping for that outcome. And to me, we do see a minor line move on Michailidis, 15 cents at PointsBet. So, other people are thinking what we're thinking too, Jake. So I'm excited to hear that. So, all right. So moving on, we have now I think we're down to the underdogs, right? Yep. So keep scrolling down. We have CJ Vergara against Ode Osborne. Vergara missed weight on Friday, earlier this morning. Give me the rundown of him, Jake.
Yeah, he's a pure striker, doesn't really have any grappling, coming off 5 straight KOs. He had a 41-second KO win on a Contender Series recently. He landed like a knee to the liver. Seemed a little bit fluky, but I mean, whatever. Good for him for hitting the liver. But yeah, I mean, he's been kind of a brawler, just brawling striker. He's what we're looking for in DFS from that perspective. He did miss weight by 1.5 pounds. I wasn't overly impressed by what I saw from him. It kind of seemed like he left his chin exposed. But he's in an interesting matchup, and it's a fight to target against Ode Osborne there. I think that fight's going to not last very long, and someone's probably going to get knocked out. So I think he's sort of intriguing, but overall as a prospect, I'm not overly excited about Vergara.
Fair enough, but we target matchups, and we're in on that one this week. All right, Bruno Souza, who's in his last fight was potentially the worst fight I've ever seen in my entire life. He's up against Bogdasarian. Souza missed weight as well, and he's a late replacement, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we're checking all the boxes here on red flags.
Right, he took it on like a week's notice after TJ Laramie dropped out. He missed weight by like 2.5 pounds. He is coming in on like a 10-fight winning streak, but honestly, it looks pretty suspect. Like multiple split decisions. I think 6 of his last 7 fights, 5 of those ended in decisions. 1 was a DQ win. Pretty capped upside. He's a karate style fighter that isn't going to mix in any grappling. I'm not at all excited about Souza. I'm only wondering if he can ruin that fight for Melzik or not. If he can kind of dance around the octagon in his karate, setup and not get hit by Melzik. But I don't think that's actually going to happen, but that's my only concern. It's just like, does Souza ruin that fight? Because I definitely don't think he can score well.
Yeah, I mean, it must be rare for me to not be excited to play a 6% fighter in their debut, and that's the case with me for Souza. So that should tell you all you need to know about him. Lock in the first round knockout for him now that I said that. And then the final fighter making their debut, this fight was scheduled a couple of weeks ago. Thankfully, we already had it all written up and charted. Chris Curtis up against Phil Hawes. Chris Curtis was in the PFL. Thoughts on him, Jake?
Yeah, so he's like a 34-year-old journeyman, 26-8. He's only been finished twice in his career, 1 KO, 1 submission. He's basically a one-dimensional boxer. Interestingly enough, only 1 of his last 17 fights has ended in the first round. So while he is kind of like this power puncher, KO or bust, his KOs have come later in fights. So it kind of lowers his upside a little bit for DFS. Like you said, he had signed on like really short notice. I think he filled in for Drawn Nguyen on like a day's notice like a month ago. And then Hawes was like, yeah, I don't want to fight this guy in a day. So they pushed it back a month. So they've had a month to prepare for each other, but not overly impressed by anything that Curtis has done. He went on the Contender Series a few years ago. He got a round 3 KO, and even with the finish, they weren't impressed enough to give him a contract. So he went back to the regional scene. He's been fighting like the PFL. Yeah, I would say he's a KO or bust guy. I mean, I think your hopes with him is that Hawes tires out and that Curtis can land like a solid strike in the third round and finish it. Which we've seen Hawes look a little bit suspect towards the end of fights at times, but not overly excited by Curtis.
And that is a little sneak preview of one of Jake's best bets in the daily plug. So make sure you check it out, OccupyFantasy.com. After you finish watching this video, it's already up. Top plays, FanDuel, DraftKings, low risk, high risk contests, Jake's best bets, lineup specific strategies for all types of contests on both sites. Make sure you check it out. Curtis, a little preview there. But again, all these guys are not really guys we're too thrilled about, which makes it fun for DFS. So, guys, we are thrilled about, or women we're thrilled about. Jake, give me a fight or two. You mentioned the Osborne and Vergara fight. We already talked about that. Give me another fight that you're looking to target for DFS. You think both sides in a win could produce a big score?
Yeah, so looking beyond Osborne, I think the obvious one is probably the Burgos Quarantillo fight. Both those guys are going to be super up tempo. We're going to see a ton of strikes thrown. Quarantillo will probably look to get it to the ground. Burgos has an 89% takedown defense, going to make it tough. I think he's been taken down like 6 times on 50 plus attempts so far in the UFC. So I think it ends up being like a stand up brawl, which Quarantillo has done his best work when he can get fights to the ground, and he's going to be super popular. So I think Burgos is pretty interesting in this spot because he's looking to bounce back from 2 straight losses, and he got violently kind of put to sleep. It wasn't even knocked out. He got like rebooted by Edson Barbosa in his last fight, where he gets hit, and there's like literally a 5-second delay from the time he gets hit until he like backpedals and just like collapses and he's done. It was sort of scary and the most bizarre KO you've seen. So that's a little bit concerning, but what was that, like 5-6 months ago? So hopefully he's had enough time to recover because he's a super exciting boxer, really high pace. You know, we've got the number 2 and the number 4 in terms of significant strikes landed on the slate. And on top of that, Burgos absorbs the 3rd most and Quarantillo absorbs the 11th most. So we should see a ton of striking. I think there's a pretty good chance we get a late knockout in that one. Typically, Burgos' fights, we see a ton of round 3 KOs just through attrition. I mean, there's just only so many of these power punches you can take. So I think that one has a good chance to score well.
Please let it not be Quarantillo as the most popular dog for the 3rd time in a row. Please. Yeah, because you got him at 36% right now. The past couple of slates, he's been an underdog. He's been up near 40%, and he's put up slate-breaking scores. But again, there's another matchup where he can do it, and if you're playing multiple lineups, you almost have to have exposure to Quarantillo. But I will say, a little bit step down in competition for Burgos, given his last couple of fights to this one. And Burgos has the recency bias against him here. And we see that. We see Quarantillo with double the ownership on DraftKings, nearly on FanDuel as well. But the betting markets agree, a little bit of a line move on Quarantillo, so a little bit of a leap of faith there. So, and just on that note, Burgos is probably my favorite tournament play, just based on that leverage alone. Rare for us to get a favorite at half the ownership of the underdog. Jake, do you have any fighters we haven't talked about yet, or maybe we have talked about that's your favorite tournament play outside of Burgos?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Burgos too, and we kind of touched on it, but I think Andreas, I mean, he's that super gross, super low owned play, but, going against a guy that only has one MMA fight in the last 5 years, and we've seen Andreas shoot for takedowns. He shot for 1 in the first round in each of his last 2 fights. I mean, one of those resulted in him getting knocked out from elbows in his debut, but that was up a weight class. So I think that's kind of my gross play of the slate is Andreas. And if he can get the fight to the ground, I think that he has a chance to end it there with a submission or ground and pound. Super low owned, super gross. He probably gets knocked out, but I think that's a good play to definitely be above the field. To what extent, that's up to you.
I mean, this is a textbook spot, right? No matter how gross it is, Mihailidis, UFC veteran by our standards, up against a fighter making their debut who hasn't fought a ton, has a limited record, hasn't fought a lot recently, and has shown to be taken down in the past. Questionable gas tank. We've seen this spot before, so you got to play it. It's a macro level MMA DFS play. So, all right, before we get out of here, Jake, let's hit him with our stream parlay of the week. Again, for all of Jake's best bets, check out the daily plug at OccupyFantasy.com, but also check out Jake's site, MMADFS.com, where he gives betting implications for every single fight on the card. You don't want to miss it. It's free to read. Go check it out. So, Jake, I'll start it off, and I think we've talked about the late replacement in Bagdasaryan's opponent, Bruno Souza. I'm going to go with Bogdasarian, who's an absolute beast. Round 1 KO plus 360 for me.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, especially with the weight miss too that we saw earlier. I mean, I liked it before that, and the weight miss just added to that. And speaking of that, I think in a similar vein, I'm going to go Ode Osborne round 1 KO at plus 1,000, also against the UFC newcomer, also against the guy that missed weight. I think both those lines are too wide. I mean, that's what these guys do. Like these guys just finish people in the first round. I mean, Osborne hasn't been out of the first round in 8 fights. You know, Melzik, I think until his last 2 fights, all of his matches had ended in like a minute and a half or less. I love it, man. Let's get both those guys. Let's start the slate off right with back-to-back round 1 KOs, and that's gonna be about just under plus 5,000. So
We'll take it. We'll take it.
yeah.
2 quick finishes right off the bat, and we'll be good to go. So, all right, again, for all of Jake's work, MMADFS.com breaks down every fight, fighter backgrounds, betting DFS implications. He's also got some premium content over there, so go check it out. OccupyFantasy.com is where you can read our daily plug that Jake also writes with top plays, specifically FanDuel and DraftKings, lineup strategies, his best bets, all in one spot. Our Occupy model, which you see on screen here, ranks every fighter based on historical data and predictive metrics. FanDuel DraftKings rankings, projected ownership. It's what I use to build out my lineups. Jake uses it well. Use our lineup builder to build up to 150 lineups for FanDuel and DraftKings. Lots of tools. If you're not using it, you're behind the field. So for Jake, you can follow him on Twitter at DFS_MMA. You can follow me at Brian Jester FF. Follow us at Occupy Fantasy. Everybody enjoy UFC 268. Some great fights on the card, and good luck.